fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender.
The constitutional point of view was critical for Jefferson's support of the Bill of Rights.
As we mourn the loss of thousands of our citizens, I can hear you!
Is time running out?
It's Saturday. Welcome to the Hayden Collins radio program, The Intelligence Syndicate. Well, I'm a little late posting this week. We did the show on time, but I have to do this intro up front to let everybody know. Yeah, the guard was a little busy. We had some things going on. We were staging all over the place, getting ready for this hurricane, and this is what we like to call a drive-by. Now, I'll let you know right now, the islands took a pretty serious hit. We don't know the damage yet. We don't know how bad it is. But looking on the satellite, you can definitely tell it was pretty rough. But all of the structures there, and I don't want to say all, a majority of the structures there, they're not designed for hurricanes. So we have expectations that there's going to be things scattered all over the place and buildings just ripped apart. I almost want to say that if you live in a place like that, you should almost have concrete walls, concrete floors, and concrete roof. just because, you're in Storm Alley, you're in Hurricane Alley down there. But, I'm pretty sure there's a few people that didn't make it through that. Keep that in mind. Okay, on down to the business. Other business. Couple of things that, are not going to make the news this week, but I definitely want to bring to everybody's attention. Has anybody heard what has happened to the NCAA? Oh, geez, Hayden, what are you talking about? Okay, so here it goes. A little over a year ago, the FBI started busting people because one of the agents for a shoe company turned state's evidence on bribery, and it was busting into all the universities, and the universities were getting chastised. People were resigning, and they were potential to go to jail, and cats were sleeping with dogs, and the NCAA was embarrassed because they had no idea this was going on, and thank you, FBI, for bringing this to our attention, but we'll handle it from here. Has anybody heard anything since then? Or has the NCAA just quietly made sure that that went under the rug because that's part of their program? Sponsorships and money, part of their program. Those coaches get their benefits. Those students get their benefits. And speaking of which, we're now at the point where this little, let's get our kids in the school by bribing the university with a few $1 million kind of thing may come to a head. Because it looks like those young starlets in California that had money to put their kids in school that apparently didn't have the brain cells to make chocolate milk, they may be going to jail. Kind of a harsh condition for that. But in our roundtable discussion, and I am going somewhere with this, in our roundtable discussion, we talked about school systems and what they're doing and how schools are coming into play. So the university systems are getting away from equal opportunity placement. And it has nothing to do with racism. It has nothing to do with anything else. What it has to deal with is their graduation rates need to increase. So, geez, what does that mean? Okay, so let's draw the story out here. So back in the day, universities were required to take X amount of minority students or they would lose their federal funding. That was how the equal opportunity and the federal government leveled the playing field So if you were a minority student and you weren't up to snuff, it didn't matter. You were still accepted because the university had to check that box. They had to check that box, and you had to graduate from that university regardless of what happens, or they don't get their federal funding. Now, this was a big mistake because this created an inflated position for minorities that really didn't qualify, didn't complete the system, and they were abusing the system to get position. They were effectively not qualified. They didn't go to the courses. In fact, there were stories about students that signed up for the university and once they figured out the system, didn't even attend the semester. But they still passed them because the university had to show that they had passed so many minorities. Now, that was at the beginning because it didn't happen later on. That was at the beginning of it because they knew they were taking advantage of the system. But then there were kids that actually got something out of it and did something with it, and thank God for that. But you could see how the system was abused. It was really abused. Well, take it forward to, 2010, 2012, 2014. And now the university systems have gotten to the point to where they realize somewhat of the error of their ways, and they are changing their acceptance criteria because there's more money in graduating students, paying students, than there is from getting money from the federal government. It's a business model. So some of the major universities are doing something that is really odd for some people, but they're taking the most qualified. What a concept. They're taking the most qualified individuals with the highest test scores, and their graduation rates have increased in the past 8 years. And the reason they've increased is the fact that, these students will graduate. And if they graduate, our graduation rate goes up, and they backdoor the federal funding because they're receiving funding based on their graduation rate, not on the individuals graduating. What a concept. The most qualified gets the job. Well, now this is what 8-10 years ago is when this started. So let's go fast forward now. Here we are today. There's programs in businesses now, in the private sector, where they're copying the same thing that's going on there. And now the government section is hiding behind the same thing, even for, if you go to USA Jobs, let me tell you the trick about USA Jobs. If you ever go on USA Jobs, understand your application is not even read. It's run through a system that it sorts it based on matching words. So what you do at the bottom of your resume is you copy their job description into the bottom of your resume, and you get a 100% match. There's the trick to USA Jobs. Okay, at least you get through the filter system so somebody with human eyes actually reads your resume. So if you got a good resume and you think you can do the job and you want to be a part of it, copy their job description in your resume and put it at the bottom. And then, watch the whole matching thing take place, and you might get an opportunity to actually get an interview. But anyway, even on USA Jobs, speaking with individuals that are using that to fill their government slots, they're not even looking at status like that. The statuses they look at are disabled veteran, or civilian. That's the three things they're sorting by now. They're not sorting by race. They're looking for that's the sort and who's the most qualified. And that's even on the government side. So one has to sit back and wonder, okay, where is this going and why does that legislation, has it run its course now? Because either they've worked a way around it, they found a way around the legislation to make it work, because out of necessity for the universities. But see, here's the other trick the universities have done in recent years as well. Some of you may realize out-of-state tuition. There's a trick for you. Out-of-state tuition. If you're a major university, let's say the University of Alabama, and there's people from all over the United States that go to University of Alabama. Not because of their football team, okay? But University of Alabama is tightly knitted with NASA. Their science program's spectacular, okay? And they want to charge out-of-state tuition. So picture this. You have all these kids showing up for out-of-state tuition, and they're paying double what the kids in Alabama are paying. So you're going to court as many kids as you possibly can from outside the state of Alabama because you like getting paid double for doing what you do for the kids in Alabama. Now, what's this created? It's created a bunch of kids from Alabama that can't even graduate from their own university system because they don't get accepted based on the money. I'll make it simpler for you. If you have 100 seats for this freshman year and you have 100 applicants from out of state, they get accepted before the in-state kids do, because the university system gets paid double, and it's all about money. So you see where this is going. I mean, and keep in mind, universities are in business to make money, and if you are ever, shocked and amazed by that, look at your student loan bill. Look at some of the things the universities charge you for. I like the charge, what is it, for off-campus students. This was hilarious. I love this one. If you're a non-traditional student and you're off campus, they charge you an internet fee. And you're going, well, wait a second, I'm not on campus to use the internet. I'm off campus. I'm a virtual student. Well, yeah, but, we're charging you an internet fee. I'm paying for my internet at my house. Why are you charging me an internet fee? We're the university and we can do it. You want your credit hours? Shut up. It's a full circle, and boy, did that hurt. All right, so let's stay. I got to stay on task here. I've painted the picture for you. I've given you the background of this. So let's take it to this realm. Let's go to K through 12 and go to, junior school level, meaning junior college level. So now the federal government, as of this week, has come out with the new funding mechanisms for block grants for K through 12 for each one of the states. Now, if you're not familiar with this, if you're not in education, you're going, geez, Hayden, what are you talking about? The federal government does not fund Bob's Elementary School. Okay? What the federal government does is it issues a great big block grant, which is a large sum of money, and they send it to the state. The state of Georgia received X amount of dollars in block grant money to help run their public school systems. Okay? Every state gets it. And the state has to follow the federal guidelines in order to use that money, or they don't get it anymore. They'll get some, it's different levels. You get some taken away. This is why we had Race to the Top, No Child Left Behind, different funding mechanisms that take place. So for the, and that's what, I guess we can say this, the funding mechanisms that took place changed based on the administration, changed every 2 years basically, because the funding would only be good for 2 years so they can change the funding, or they can change the program. That's why you got No Child Left Behind. Then you got, what was it? Oh, I forget. Race to the Top. And then Common Core. No, Common Core became before Race to the Top. You just get different funding mechanisms. So the new funding mechanism from the federal government is the feds have decided through their own infinite wisdom that they're not going to be involved in general education because, lo and behold, it's not in the Constitution. There's a constitutionalist up there all of a sudden pushing buttons. Oh boy, this is really going to upset everybody. But the constitutionalist that's pushing buttons has decided that since education is covered in the state constitutions, that maybe the states, like they did before 1979, should have control of their own educational system, and the federal government should not control their education system. Now, why would that be? Why would you think something like that would happen? Well, let's scratch our heads on this for a moment. We used to be, we were in first place for education for a long time. Then we were in the top 5 for a long time. Starting in 1979, we've consecutively, year after year after year, gone down in education, because the one thing that is the common related issue in the United States deterioration in education is that federal government involvement. So they've recognized that now, and they said, well, when we have 50 states competing against each other, we had a better education system in the United States. So the block grant funding system from the federal government is changing, and the way it's changing is to create competition in the states, not to force feed them money. Now, that means that some states, lo and behold, are not going to get a lot of money, and other states will get a lot of money. The issue is going to be based purely upon scores and needs, not necessarily deferred maintenance, but more capital renewal, things of that nature. Now, the reason this comes as a strike to everyone, and there's going to be shock and awe in the education system, is that the federal government is basically bowing out of the K through 12 program. The Department of Education is going to start refocusing on higher education, meaning university level research, university level programs, university level investments. And if the federal government is investing in those programs, well, the Biological Research Center at Bob's University, which is receiving private funding to do research, or private grants to do research, or federal grants to do research, is now going to be better funded to perform that research and get newer facilities and newer equipment. And it's going to be a focus on that research, that equipment, that position, those individuals, those lab rats. I hate using that term, but you guys understand lab rats are the technicians that work in those labs. That program is going to be enhanced, which is going to provide, advancement in science and technology, okay, regardless of the field that it's in. But it will also create a competition for all the students that want to go into that field where they see where the money is and where the research is and they want to be a part of it. They're not going to get there from K through 12, even through STEM classes or specialized charter schools. What they're going to come in with is a competition knowledge and an eagerness to learn that's not there right now. Now, there's going to be big arguments that spur out of this. It'll take about 6 or 8 months to really come into play. But the big arguments that are really going to spur out of this is each one of the states are going to say, well, I'm not getting as much money as they are, and whatever the case may be. And there'll be justifications, but there's going to be fights. And some of the fights are going to revolve around like high schools. I like using this example over and over again, but St. Louis, they built so many schools, and they had all these schools, and they had one school that was designed for 3,000 students. They had 600 kids in it. And there was another high school 8 blocks away that had like 300 kids in it that was designed for 2,000 students. The argument was, the teachers wanted to keep their jobs, and they said, you hired us to do these jobs, you got a commitment. And the guy came back and said, look, we're in business to educate children, and we're not in business to employ teachers. And lo and behold, they shut down 17 schools. Now, it's not going to be that drastic. In fact, I don't even think they're probably going to shut down any schools as I look at this. They may reorganize, make middle schools, elementary schools, or combine some schools. They may reorganize based on that. But the days of brick and mortar schools are going to become few and far between here soon, because outside of the K through 12 program, everything could be done online. In fact, the one thing that I talked about in previous weeks that we're looking at, the increase in homeschooling, and this is something in that article, I forgot to mention that last time. I should probably mention it now. In that article about homeschooling, one of the fears that parents have about the public school system is violence. And they just don't want their kids exposed to that violence. They want them in a conducive environment for education. And of course, this is a double-edged sword. The double-edged sword is, if they don't recognize violence and see it, they won't know how to handle or treat it. That's one side of it. But the other side of it is, the crazy kid that has an IEP or an SST that the teachers can't do anything about it. He's going to show up with a gun someday and nobody can do anything about it. And then all of a sudden you got other issues and other violence. Oh yeah, here's the other thing about that program. A lot of the IEPs and SST programs that are out there, with the new funding and the federal government, picking and choosing what they're going to fund, a lot of these, we're going to hold your hand programs and create the softer, gentler child that creates discipline problems in the classroom. That kid's going to have to find a new school, because the schools are no longer going to be paid to put up with that. They're just going to dismiss the kid and say, here, go to another school, or, become homeschooled, have a nice day. You're your parents' responsibility now, not ours, because the majority of children in that classroom are what's going to be the answer to this problem. The ones that they can educate are the ones they're going to educate. The ones that they can't educate, that won't pay attention, that roam the halls, that leave the classrooms, that want to cut class and things like that, they are going to allow them every opportunity to leave school because they don't want them around anymore. The other kids that want to promote, the other kids that want to create competition, that want to move forward in this human race, if you will, or this race to achieve, they will have less competition to deal with, so it's not going to hurt them at all. And inside the classroom, well, guess what? They won't have to wait on Junior to figure out how to spell "the" when all the rest of them know about it, and the teacher will have to focus on Junior. Now the teacher can focus on the class, and the entire class can move forward. So in a sense, the weakest link gets removed. You know, I mean, that competition is fierce. It's dog eat dog. Well, guess what? Competition also creates success. And the recognition of where the public school systems have gone astray in the past 15 years or since 1979, and the downgrading of our public school systems, because no matter how much money we've thrown at it, the scores continually go down. Guess what? Now we're going to stop throwing money at it and watch the scores go up. Anyway, I just wanted to make sure that that was something that is coming out. I mean, I know I started off with the NCAA and how things have dropped off the planet, and they're not talking about that. But the reason I wanted to start off with that this week is, guys, you don't hear any more about No Child Left Behind. You don't hear any more about Race to the Top. You don't hear any more about Common Core. And the reason you don't hear about that educational standard, that educational problem, is the funding mechanisms are changing. There is no longer going to be a federal funding mechanism from the federal government. It is going to states, and each state's going to promote their own educational system, and each state's going to compete against other states for qualified personnel, well-trained individuals, and well-educated individuals to promote that state's ability to move forward and become productive and attract businesses and jobs. And remember what I told you about the universities? It's all about the money. Guess what? It's all about the money everywhere. All right, we come back. We got the Twins coming on. And then, and by the way, I got a vacation coming up, so there won't be a show in a couple of weeks, so I'm taking 2 weeks off. Those of you in the winds of the hurricane, Godspeed to you. Let's hope this passes through really quick. And then keep an eye on the islands, because when the cloud clears and the satellites start getting shot, I'm sure it's going to be a mess. See you after the break.